All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Can you hear me okay? Yesterday I was having some problems with my AirPods. Am I coming through okay?
Sound good.
All right, cool. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Today we are joined by Crystal White talking about negotiations. And then I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow Mark is going to be speaking on how to control your emotions during a transaction. So hopefully you can make it for that. And then last but not least, the grand opening party is this Friday from 2 to 5 at the BottleWorks office. So if you haven't seen the space, it's really beautiful. I'm really excited about it. I'm here right now. So hopefully you can come join us for that. Without further ado, Crystal White.
Oops, I did not realize it muted me. Good morning, everybody. Oh, I'm really excited. It's like a smaller gathering of us because when you have to fill in for Mark, it can be a little intimidating. So, anyways, so for those of you that were expecting Mark, you got me. I'm gonna make it the best that I can, but I think we're gonna have some good stuff. So, my goal and my intention today. Thank you, Trisha, for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So, my goal and intention for today is to give you to cover the four main areas that we really work on and need negotiating skills in our real estate transactions, to try to give you what I have and then open it up for questions, because I really want to hear more specific things. So this group, this size is perfect for that. But do know that I'm a high I personality. That means like I have this much that I always want to do, and I have that much time, and they don't always go together. And it's a flaw of mine, but bear with me. So I'm going to try to get through this. If you have questions at all during anything that I'm saying, if you can kind of write them down, because that is my goal. I really want us to have open dialogue toward the end. Okay. So I wrote, when I was taking notes, figuring this out, planning this out yesterday, I wrote down the art of negotiations, because it truly is an art. I believe it's a skill that we have to get good at. We have to really increase that skill. And I don't think there's ever a time that you're just like, I'm amazing at this, I don't need to learn anymore. Because it is part of people skills, and people skills, we're in the people business, right? And so we should always be wanting to fine tune our people skills. So big kudos and congrats for those of you that are making this a priority for you. And so when I'm thinking of people skills, I have said it before and I'll repeat it again. When a person has to leave out of their sales position, like it didn't work, they have to go do something else. Typically, it's because they failed to master one or more of these four areas. And it is money management, time management, emotional management, and people skills. Those are four skill sets that you have to learn how to really be good at in order to thrive in, especially as a contractor or self-employed entrepreneur in the arena of sales. So this fits right in there with that people skill. So it is imperative. It's not something cool to know. It's something you better know, right? So the area of negotiations for our business, I'm going to cover the four areas are our contract negotiations. And that is, and can I just say really quick, Mark, thank you for having your camera. No blast, no knock to those of you who are on here and have your camera off, because I do it too. But I just want to tell Mark Sprout, thank you so much, dude. I feel like you are my audience. I'm talking right at you. So,
Well, what's
and Leslie
funny?
does have her picture up, so I appreciate that
What's funny is
too.
I've not had my camera on all week except for today.
It was just for me. I thank you. See, I just believe in prayer. So thank you. All right. So contract negotiations. And when I'm talking about that, I'm going to be talking about your listing contracts and our buyer contracts. The second one being purchase agreements, obviously encounters. The third one being our inspection responses. And the fourth one is mutual releases. So no one likes that, but that's definitely something we're going to have to cover today. So the first step I think with negotiating a tool that you want to know or have is to overcome objections before they even present themselves. I think that is so important, that if you have done this business long enough or you've been in training, you've heard about it, whether you're new, whatever experience, when you see a certain pattern that continues to happen in your business or others, it is imperative, it is smart, and it is wise to add systems in that will help overcome those before they even become issues. So here's some examples in those four areas I want to give you when I'm saying that. Number one, your contract negotiations, right? Like what you're getting paid, and because that is a negotiation, right? So for me, what I do is I show my worth and my value, as well as what that seller's bottom line, their profit's going to be, before I mention what my fee is. Um, and I want you to write this down. Don't be apologetic for knowing your worth. So, but you have to know your worth first. Don't rely on the client to dictate what your worth is. So you should already have a price, a fee already in your mind. This is what I charge. Do you sometimes flex from that? Yeah, it happens, but it shouldn't be all the time, and it shouldn't just be a running scale for me. So the first thing with that confidence is knowing your worth and knowing what you charge and what that is. Learn to become comfortable with silence and pauses. I just had a listing that I have coming up. I went through my whole listing presentation and everything with the seller, and they, made a little comment like, "Oh, okay, so this is your fee." And I said, "Yep. And I'm worth every dime of it," or something like that. I made, and it was no big conversation. Then she texted me, I think like a week ago, just before we were going to go on the market. And she said, "I was going through these and I noticed that you're charging 6.5%. I've never seen anybody charge over 6%. Is that accurate?" And I just texted her back. I said, "You're correct." And there was a pause. No one was texting back and forth after that. Now, one of my natural reactions was going to be to justify it or to say something. And I was like, she just asked a question and I answered it. So then she responds back and she was like, "Oh, okay. I had never seen that before. I never heard of a price, anyone charging that much." And I said, "Yep, that's my normal fee. And I'm worth every dime of it, I assure you." And she replied back, she said, "I have no doubt, thank you." And we left it alone. Um, I could have she knew what my fee was. She was asking me again. So what that tells me is she's been talking to people and someone has mentioned something. And so she tried to run it past me, and I could have easily. Now, would I have, if we needed to get into negotiation, would I have possibly lowered my fee for them? I'm not going to say no, I definitely would not have, but that is not something. I don't give away my kids' money quickly. So just, you don't have to be so quick to do that. Just answering questions, but be comfortable with the pause, be comfortable with the silence, because the one who speaks first is often the one who loses, right? So just a little tip on that one. But with your buyer contract too, if you're doing buyer agencies, I love, one of our agents is really great at buyer contracts. And I love that when I asked him about what he does, one of the things he mentions is he does like I do with listings. It's just part of the process. Like, he doesn't make a big deal of it. He tells them, "Hey, when we meet tomorrow or whatever, this is going to be that. And my fee, well, I'll discuss that and that'll be part of it." Like, you just go with the flow instead of making it like, "Okay, and so I charge 7%." Like, don't make a big deal of it, basically. As far as, that's overcoming that before that objection comes up. And I know price can be a big thing, and I know I charge more than what most realtors do. And so because I know that, that's why I've structured my sellers consultations in the format that I do, so that by the time we even discuss that, they know what they're getting and all that kind of stuff. The second thing on purchase agreements encounters, pick up the phone. You've heard it before, but I want to say it again because I get a lot of those calls and I don't mind. Always feel free to call me in the middle, afterwards, before, whatever. But typically, the main thing I have to tell the agents when they're calling me is, have you called them? Have you picked up the phone? And usually the answer is no. And so I can't say that enough. Pick up the phone at any time during the process, anytime, whether it's before or at the end. But as far as our purchase agreements in the beginning, picking up the phone to find out, of course, you guys have heard it before. What would make this great for that buyer? What are they looking for? But not only that, if you are doing something unusual like your buyer's willing to pay the taxes, your buyer's willing to pay the owner's title, the seller's title work, all of that. Because that is not something that is normal for our minds to see. And as the listing agent, you may be getting 10, 15 more offers, right? If you have done something unusual that is good, you should bring that out. So put it in your email. That is how my client just over the weekend got her offer accepted, because we did some unusual things, but the listing agent did not notice them. And so I put on the email that I was doing blah, blah, blah. We're doing this, 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 this. This is on the email. And then when I text her, I mentioned it too. Because you guys, when you send over an email, always make sure you're shooting it, following it up with the text, right? So she reached back out to me and said, oh, can you do an amendment showing that your client's going to do all these things? And I said, well, it's already in the purchase agreement. Let me walk you through where. This lady has been a realtor longer than me. I did not make her feel like an idiot. I was just happy to walk her through and show her, and she was like, oh my God, never mind. I see it or whatever. So my point being to you is, you never know what the skill set of that other realtor is. And I know in your mind, you may be thinking, well, if I check that, then they should catch it. Don't. Part of negotiating, you guys, sugar takes you a lot further than salt. And don't assume. I always assume for the best. And I would rather, and I try not to think of people as idiots, because that's my first thought. So I work really hard to overcome that, because that doesn't take me in a good place. The inspection response, how you can overcome objections before they happen with inspection responses. When you're meeting with your buyers and you're doing buyer consultations with them, explaining, I'm very blunt in a funny manner to explain to them, when you get your inspection, you are going to have like over 30 pages of stuff that they suggest. And all of it's great information, but the things that we're focusing on are the major things, and I explain what that is. I do the same with going with the sellers, explaining, hey, this is what an as-is means. It kind of means nothing. So I explain to them all of those things before they even get an as-is offer, before the buyer gets an inspection. And the reason is they usually don't remember it. But what happens is when it comes time for us to negotiate or we're talking, they have a point of reference, and I can refer back and say, remember when we first had our conversation, we were talking about what as is meant, or when we were talking about your inspection response and how you're going to have like 30 pages, but we're just looking for these few key things. Those are things that help if you set the bar, if you at least give them, if it's not brand new information at that point. And I hope that makes sense. You guys, as is, I think that is one, just a quick little plug that can save a lot of issues with inspection stuff. If you thoroughly explain to your clients what these things really mean, because it doesn't sound, what an as-is addendum means is not what it sounds like. It sounds like it's just, here it is, but that is not what it means. So that's not how it plays out legally. The last one in regards to this are the mutual releases. And so this one deserves an hour in itself. So I'm going to give you a little bit, and you guys, like I said, you ask me more questions you want to ask. But as far as the buyer consultation and seller consultation, this is another thing that I use to overcome this objection before it comes up. And so explaining in advance what things you have a right to be able to mutual release out to the buyer, and I'd explain them to my sellers as well, like what those things are and what point in there, and then explaining to them that just because you are right does not mean you automatically will just willingly get that earnest money. Because it's the truth, you guys. It is very much the truth. You can be right and the seller can want to fight you on it, and it can turn into court. And so without getting into a lot of full details in the beginning, I just give them, in other words, I don't give people false hope and false assurance. So we want to be careful with that, because then they might be hanging their hat on that throughout the whole process and you don't know it. Once things start to go a little south, another way that you can kind of help negotiations before it even gets really bad with mutual releases is when you start to see things are going south, when you start to explain, hey, here's some of your options, boom, 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 and as regarding to a mutual release, explaining how that really actually works. I can't tell you how many agents I get calls from that have already overpromised on what can happen on a mutual release, and then they bring me in. Then they call me, and what happens is they have to go back and undo. And I feel horrible for those agents, because I would hate to be on the other end of that conversation where you're trying to explain, basically, I know I told you that, yeah, they can't do this and they can do that, and the seller can do this, the buyer can't do that, when you haven't gotten all your facts. And so I'm going to let you all ask me any specific questions if you feel like you want to know those when I open it up. But what I do want to say before I transition out of this is, in regards to mutual release, if you are unsure on something, before you start negotiating heavily, you pick up the phone, you call me, you can't get me, call Mark or call Rex, like you get your information. And so I think that's an important thing with the art of negotiating, knowing where you stand. Not what you think or what you feel, or I don't think, like that doesn't matter what you think. What matters is we're talking about contracts. We need to make sure that we know what the facts are, and what the what does it say legally? Like what are their rights legally, or what rights don't they have legally? And so I think I'm going to leave that alone and let you guys ask, because like I said, I could spend an hour on mutual release things. But so just making sure, I in my experience, that has always worked for me over the last 6 years, is being able to clearly explain and not putting my ego in it to where I'm like, you should do this and you should make them, you should do that. I see that so much, you guys. I'm going to get into that in a minute, but you guys, take your egos out of the transaction. This is not your home. It's not your investment. It is a transaction for you. So take your ego out of it. And sometimes clients are willing to put up with things that you're like, they shouldn't have to do. No, maybe they shouldn't have to do it, but if they're willing to do that and they don't want to take the risk, but you're Billy Badass and you like that kind of stuff. I mean, I want you to think long and hard before you start doing all that with someone, when you can hijack someone else's home, someone else's earnest money. Like, this is not your home. It's just your transaction. And guess what? That client is just a client. It's not your buyer. It's not your seller. They are a client. Right? And so I think that removing yourself personally out of the situation plays a big role when you can actually give them facts. And as a highly opinionated person who has an opinion on everything in the world, I understand how difficult that can be to withhold your opinion at times. Trust me, I'm not saying that lightly. I do want to talk a little bit about how mutual releases work, just for a second, if that's okay. Where are we at on time? Okay. I'm talking to experienced agents, so you guys pretty much have the gist. But let me just share a few things that I've had to say to several experienced agents during my short time as the managing broker here. And one of those things are, just so you know, when you are in the height, Phil, I will look at, I can't see your whole question, but I will look at that in a minute. And I will answer any question you have, Phil. But one of the main things that I'm constantly explaining is that when you are in a mutual, when your tension is high and you're going through inspection response or whatever, and mutual releases are flying around, like the words or the thoughts of them or whatever, just know this: a seller has the right. So the contract you have, a buyer and seller have, is one thing. The earnest money dispute is a different thing. Those are two different things. And most agents think they go hand in hand. And if we can't come to the agreement on that, we just get to hijack. You can't sell your home. They can't buy another house, whatever. And that is so not true. So your contract expires when you were supposed to close on the house or whatever, whenever that closing date is. So if you guys are having disputes and you're supposed to close in like 4 days and you guys can't come to terms, that listing agent, whether you or whoever, the seller can go back on the market, no problems, while still hashing out your dispute for earnest money. They can go back on the market soon as that contract expires, and it expires when you were supposed to close. Like, it's done. After that, that's it. It doesn't matter what you guys, if you've signed a mutual release or not, you're no longer in contract with them. Okay. Then what do you think that does with that seller? Do you think that they're more more willing and flexible and eager to work with you? No, because they're back on the market and they can actually hijack that buyer's mutual earnest money for a while they are back on the market, getting another buyer and moving on. Your client needs to know that. So, and it can take, so yes, we will get involved. I will fight for you, all that kind of stuff, but I just don't want you giving them this thought. I hear agents doing it all the time, telling them, well, they'll, if they want to sell the house, they'll probably, it'll be in their best interest to sign this mutual release and give you the money. Not the case. Okay. So just want you guys to kind of know that, that those two do not go hand in hand, and your buyer, they shouldn't be buying another house, shouldn't end up putting another offer in until their contract is done with the original person that they were trying to buy from. Even if there's a earnest money dispute, they're kind of held hostage too. They should not be offering on another house and moving on unless they can afford to buy both houses, because at any point they could be legally obligated to finish up that first transaction. Okay. Want to give some general tips, and I'm going to open it up for questions. I'm going to read Phil's questions. And so, number one, I've said it before: pick up the phone. 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 Good to have things in writing in case things go wrong, but it's good to pick up the phone if you want things to go right. Does that make sense? It's good to have things in writing in case things go wrong, but it is amazing to pick up that phone in case you want things to go right. Number two, don't assume anything. Ask questions, you guys. Ask questions. If you're going to assume, try to assume for the best, because when you start assuming, like, oh, I've heard about this realtor, I know how they are, or there could be all kind of things that are clouding up our mind and making us assume. Always just assume for the right. I act like and I don't want to, this is probably not a nice thing to say. I was gonna say I act like a blonde, but blondes are smart. So I act maybe a little airheadish, let's say that. So I have been called a blonde for so long, it comes out of my mouth, but when I say it, I'm like, that's kind of not nice to say that. What about people that are blonde? But I can act very airheadish. And it is because I want things to be right. I want to assume. I don't bring out my bulldog, my pit bull, until I need to. You need to have more than one dog. I have a poodle, I have a Yorkie, I have a pit bull, German Shepherd. Pit bull doesn't need to always come out. I totally am all about the poodle and the Yorkie at first. But trust me, I do have a pit that I can bring out at any time. And I know you do too, but you don't always need to know what dog you need to bring to the fight. Okay. So pick the right dog. Number three, remember that agent is representing the client on the other end. So don't shoot the messenger. So when I am, when I had a very unusual racial issue with a client last year where, long story short, we were doing the walkthrough just the day before closing. The seller had already moved to Arizona. The seller's neighbor was over fixing some things in the house and saw my client, and then all of a sudden the seller said she didn't want to sell anymore. She was backing it. Like, it was really weird. So my first thought is not ever to go to racist things, because I think that you can miss out on a lot of other realistic things that could be. So I'm picking through all these different things. And this agent, I'm getting angry because there's no reason, like it's the day before, like we are supposed to close. So um long story short, I just came out and told the agent, I said, please don't tell me this is a racial thing. Like, that is the only thing that is making sense. And I was so angry with him. I remember never wanting to like just cuss out or just go off the agent so bad. And all of a sudden I calmed down and I was like, I said his name. I was like, please, I was like, talk to me. Is this woman being racist toward my client? And he changed his whole personality. He just said, I am so sorry. He never admitted, but he just kept saying, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. So I was like, you know what? I understand that is your client. Tell me what I need to do so that we can get this done. This is ridiculous. It's appalling. It's crazy. And that is exactly what it was. She found out that my client was a Black woman and she was refusing to sell her home to her. But I bring that up because there was nothing wrong with the agent. And I was getting mad because he wasn't like siding with me at first, but he was remaining neutral. He was doing his job, his fiduciary duty to his client. He did work with me and we figured out, like, he worked with me without like ratting on his client or whatever. But that's a little bit more of an extreme case, but just know that sometimes it's not that the agent's being a butthole. Sometimes their client's a butthole, right? Like, and they have to represent them. So try to take it easy on them and not assume that this agent's being a jerk or whatever, because honestly, they're not supposed to tell you, I'm so sorry. I know this agent's being a douchebag, but they're not supposed to say that. Like, even though we do at times, they're not. They are supposed to defend and represent their client to the utmost with professionalism, right? And so that is their client. So we have to kind of try to keep that in mind. Um, my fourth thing is humble yourself. I'm talking to my high D's and my high I's here. Humble yourself. Are you representing your client or your ego? I want you to ask yourself that sometimes. Am I representing my client or my ego? Like, what am I really fighting for? Is it the ego or the client? Um, as I said before, this is a transaction for you, but it's someone's home or their investment property for them. And so I want to I hear this a lot from very experienced and very successful agents. Is I hear that ego come up so much. I I would I don't think they should do, or they don't need to do, and it's like, yeah, I know you don't, but it's not your home. It's not your place. So I want to share a little story with you that made, because it was a little gray outside, right? And it made my day, just made it all sunshiny this morning. And so when I found my condo, my home that I like am obsessively in love with, I was showing it to a different client. Um, 2 years ago, whatever. And when we were looking through it, they had already decided, okay, it's really nice, I like it, but I don't want to spend this kind of money on it. We went out onto the deck off of the master bedroom. This is a huge deck, like the size of a living room. And but it's adjoined, it's shared with the next house, like the next place over. And it was open, like, and I was like, oh, there's no way I could live here. As a single woman, like, I don't want my master bedroom. Like, I don't, I was explaining, I was like, oh, this is just so weird, right? You guys, I went on to buy that same weird scenario with it being open, all of that. If I had a realtor that was representing me, I guarantee you they would have told me, Crystal, you shouldn't get that. Like, you said you wouldn't want that. You shouldn't get that. But you guys, guess what? After I went under contract with that for that place, I was like, you know what? I don't know. I'll figure it out. If I have to pay for getting a divider or whatever, I will. During the while I was under contract, the HOA spent $18,000 to put a brand new, beautiful, massive deck up there and a partition where me and my neighbors have two separate huge balconies. And this morning, my favorite human being in the whole world, which is my mom, she's here from Atlanta and she's sitting on the balcony when I left this morning. And it is like her favorite place. And she's sitting on it and she can see all of my neighborhood from there. And she's eating her breakfast and drinking her coffee. And I'm sharing this with you because that balcony has brought so many wonderful memories. It is like the coolest place. It brings me the most calm and peace. And to see my mom enjoying it is so beautiful. But I guarantee you, if I had a realtor, they would not have allowed me to close on that house. They would have convinced me that I should not have done that. I say this to you: stick to the facts, share your facts, and then step back. Have you ever done something that you couldn't explain why you did it? Like, you're just like, I don't know, I just had this feeling. Let your clients have that feeling. You give them the facts and you step the freak back, right? Because you will rob them of those moments and those memories. So you just have to step back. And like, I'm a grown woman, and if we wouldn't have got the partition up, that's just something I would have dealt with. But guess what? Like, houses can be forever, and sometimes they can just be sold and you have to get something different, you know? So I'm not trying to be flippant, but I think we impart ourselves a little too much into transactions. And that's where the negotiation, you lose the power because your emotions are too wrapped up into it, and you've got your client's emotions spurred up. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. And so if you allow them to be emotional and you are just the one who braces it and keeps it down, I will tell you, I did not like that agent at the moment who, on that transaction, on the other deal with my client with the racism issue. But I had to really, after we closed, I had to tell myself, I was like, he's good. He is good, because I know that I would have said more than I'm sorry. I would have been so angry with my client being a racist. You know what I mean? Like, I probably would have crossed the line a little bit, but he did not. He held his calm and he was not argumentative. But he was willing to be flexible and work with me, but he stayed true to his fiduciary duties. And that's something that I think we should all try to work towards when we're negotiating things, taking that emotion out. And I'm an emotional person, so that's not easy. Number 5, and I only have 6 if you're counting. Number 5, provide a welcoming environment for an apology or a mess up. So the other side is not combative or argumentative. And so here's an example of what I mean by that. I had an amazing plat agent. We are so lucky to have him in the, like, he's awesome in every way. He called me yesterday and we're talking through, and I was like, okay, this is an example for me for negotiations training. He's talking to me and he's giving me a heads up that I might get a call. And I always like that. But we're talking about an inspector that has called some things major that are clear that none of us would ever call major. It's not even it's a no-brainer. And we talked through it, and I asked him, I said, I just have one thing I'm asking of you to do. if you can, when you reach out to him through the email, do it in a way that allows him to feel okay with admitting that he was wrong. So here's what I mean by that. Instead of you saying, what an idiot, according to my board, such and such and such and such, this does not constitute as a major defect, da 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 da. Like, how many people, if that person has an ego too, how likely are they to say, you're right, I'm so sorry, that was a mistake? They're probably going to want to defend that, right? Because you came off like offending them. But if he changes that wording to say, hey, I was just curious, since my board says da 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 are major defects and not da 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 da, I was curious if this was just an oversight or a mistake on your part. Can you clarify? Right? So like, it's an oversight. It's something simple. I wasn't sure. Instead of saying surely, like, surely you made a freaking mistake. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel the difference with that energy? And so, give people, make it welcoming and create an environment where people feel okay saying, you know what, Mark, I am so sorry. That's my bad. I made a mistake. And you say, no problem. I know we're all busy out here. We all make mistakes from time to time. No problem. That's going to take it a lot easier, because if that inspector or whoever, in this situation, it's an inspector, feels the need to defend himself, then guess what? Now you still have that listed as a major defect. Now you've got to do all these hoops jumping through. But if he just corrects that, you can call him an idiot or whatever you want. You can cuss him out, whatever, to yourself, to your friend, to me, whatever. But as far as with them, first give them a chance. Then I told that agent, now if he comes back and says no, it was intentional, I said, then you let him have it, and then you bring me in it if I need to. But give people an opportunity first. And remember, again, know what dog to bring to the dog show. Because when something is really blatant, like if you hear yourself saying, I can't believe they would do that, like, who would do that? A lot of times I have to stop and ask myself, okay, if it's that blatant, maybe they literally did not know, or they did not mean to do that. Like, maybe they're not that stupid. And I'm sorry, I use words like stupid and idiot a lot. I'm still working through that. But we all have health growth that we can achieve. But hopefully that's making sense. Just assume, maybe they didn't realize that. So I'm going to bring the poodle out. But once they make it clear they did realize it, it was on purpose, okay, now we're going to bring out a bigger dog. And so sometimes I can be that bigger dog. So just so you guys know a little something about me, I am very confrontational. Not like I like to start it, but I do not have any problem hitting things head on, hard topics and subjects. I was just kind of made for it. So although I know that I'm not afraid of that and I like it, I also realize that it's always not necessary in how you confront it. So when people say confrontational, people oftentimes think negative, being mean. So typically when I'm being confrontational, I'll start off being, it's kind. It's just, I'm going to confront the matter at hand. I'm not a person that just overlooks stuff and sweep it under the rug. I like to hit it head on. So I'm always here. I have your back, but I'm always going to encourage you, because I want your skills to be increased, to go and have a conversation, because typically that's all it takes, is a conversation. Um, the last one is keep your emotions down. Number 6, stick to the facts, share the facts, um, remove your personal thoughts and opinions. Please write that down in big bold letters. Remove your personal thoughts and opinions. Because again, it's not your home, it's not your memories that are going to be created or that don't get to be created. Find out what the client or the other agent is thinking prior to giving your opinion. So this is where I'm going to end at, is what I say by what I mean by that. For some of you, this will come natural, and that is awesome. It does not come natural for me. So for me, I like I said, I'm highly opinionated, and a lot of us are, right? We're highly opinionated and we are very knowledgeable. So I'm not undermining that. Like, we really know what we're talking about, and we're out here, we see a lot of stuff going on. Um, but what I have learned to do with especially negotiating and keeping things from getting too heightened is to just simply ask, what are your thoughts? Especially if I have a strong opinion about something, I like to just hold back and say, well, what are your thoughts? Or what is your client thinking? Does your client still want to close, or talk to me? What are we doing here? Like, are we going back and forth to get to the closing table, or are we going back and forth to find a way out? I just kind of need to know so that we can, like, let's make this happen. Um, and so in closing, for the example, like, when you have delivered the facts, because I know you guys are all about that now, when you have delivered the facts to the client and you've told them, your next reaction is going to want to be able to say, now, if I were you, right? So instead of just maybe saying, based on what I've said and shared, tell me what you're thinking. What are your thoughts? You guys try to put that in your communication a lot. Tell me what you're thinking, especially if they're being quiet. They have thoughts, you guys. The reason why I want to know what they're thinking is because I already have formed an opinion immediately. Um, and I am persuasive, and I have a very dominating personality, and many of you do too. So, and we're the professionals. So, if I say something, it's a good chance I may persuade it to go that way. And I know some of you are like, that's what I want. But so you persuade them to go that way. What if when it blows up, then what? Then that's when I get the call. And then you find out from me that you did not provide accurate information, or it wasn't a slam dunk. And then you have to go back to that client. Um, and so it's really, really good. I can't tell you guys enough, from working with such amazing agents all the time, how important it is for you to provide information, find out whether it's another agent or it's a client that you're working with. And so, okay, I cannot believe that I stopped talking at 9:45. This is amazing. Okay, Phil Kirk, do you have a good response to my least favorite question in the world? What would you do if you were buying this house? Oh, I love that. So, yes, I do, Phil. I do. I get that a lot. Well, what would you do? And this is what I always say. Oh, I'm going to tell you exactly what I would do if you tell me first what you're thinking. I need to know what you're thinking. I, I always, I always do that. And I explain to my clients, I am very persuasive, almost manipulative, and I do not want to unintentionally persuade you one way or the other. I want to hear where your heart's at and what you're thinking first. I promise you I will share my opinions. I hope that helps, Phil. Um, what are a few examples? This is from Joel. What are a few examples of inspection items most commonly categorized as major defects that aren't? Everything. Oh, um, that are most. To be honest with you, and I'm gonna let anybody else that wants to jump in and has a comment that they're seeing. I think Trisha may have something. Um, Phil, oh my God, I just read his text. Um, in my experience and what I've seen a lot, it's not so much that they're calling the major defects. They're just saying they don't want it because of all these things. And so it's not even been such a matter of it going back and forth that I've seen as a whole with, is that major? It's just, they've got this, it's got this, it's got this, like, because there's several things, and none of them may be major. It's just there was a lot of things, but they're not necessarily major. And that is why I do that in the buyer consult, to tell them, oh, if your inspector's any good, he'll come up with at least 30 pages worth of stuff, because that's his job. And so that would be, I hope that answers that, Joel. I'm not, does anybody else have something that they, yes, Trisha, please.
The thing that I find clients get stuck on is anything that's categorized as a safety hazard, they feel like should immediately be a major defect. And that can be GFCI not working on an outside outlet. That could be a trip hazard because one step is taller than the other on the front steps, but that difference might be really minor. Or like, you know, when the concrete's raised up a little bit on a walkway. There's a ton of things that are classified by inspectors as safety hazards, which is valid, but are they major defects in terms of an inspection negotiation? Like, you know, I mean, you know, so that's where I feel like there's a lot of little electrical stuff that always is going to fall into safety hazards, but is it technically really major defects? You know, that's kind of a fine line.
That's a very good one. Before I comment to that, anybody else have something they want to share or comment on what Trisha said in Joel's question?
I have a quick thing. Oh, was someone else going to talk? Sorry. So I have a listing where the buyer, I am the seller actually. And the buyer's agent calls and says, you know, I feel so, the buyer just feels so overwhelmed with the inspection report. I won't even send you the report. She just wants to back out and get her earnest money. And I said, no. I was like, you know, I quoted our purchase agreement, which says buyer needs to give seller opportunity to blah, 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 blah. And so they send the inspection report, and every major item that is major and or a safety hazard, we are actually really able to fix quite easily because my contractor has some ownership interest and his crew is free all week and they can fix everything. And so we, you know, responded that we'll fix everything. So we're still waiting for their response, but it was a weird thing because I think she was trying to do a courtesy of like, here, let's just save everyone time. But at the same time, it's like, you need to give us the opportunity to resolve these things. And if we're willing to fix all these things and she still doesn't want it, now we have grounds to keep all of her earnest money. And I even actually gave her the option. I said, you know, we can either split the earnest money now, or you can let us respond to this. Like I even tried to give her a way out, but now at this point, I'm like, I think we're going to keep all of it because, and that's also where I know the major and safety stuff is a little subjective, but we're really showing a lot of willingness to fix things. So I think she really made a mistake by saying like, playing too much of her hand, saying, oh, my buyer just doesn't want it. She feels overwhelmed. And now it's like, well, you shouldn't have said that because we're going to really test whether or not that's true.
Yep. No, thank you I like that unfortunately that agent is not on this call for that training, but that definitely, Trish, I agree. That's definitely being lazy. But she obviously has not explained to her client how, you know, overcome the objection before. And she's probably allowed her to think that that was okay, that, you know, you can bag out and that is totally not okay. And so, good job with that, Phil. I would too. Like, you need to give us a chance to do that because that's what the contract says. Phil is a C personality, very detail oriented, things like that. So it's natural for him to quote facts. If you guys ever have questions, you notice he quotes what our legal specifications and different things are in our Facebook group, which we love. Like, it's like, you don't even need to look it up, just Phil will show up. A lot of us in real estate don't have that personality style. So instead of doing like he did and we start quoting, we shoot off the cuff. Like, and I'm speaking me too. Most of our D's of us are D's or I personalities. We shoot off the cuff and it's like, no. But when you know the rules, that's why I said in negotiations, when you know the rules and you know where you stand, it makes a big difference. And so I can't wait to see how that pans out for Phil. So anybody else, question, comment? anything.
I'm going to add something real quick. If you're representing a buyer, it's the most frustrating thing I think on the listing side is to receive an inspection response where they have not done their due diligence to confirm if it is or is not a defect. So I love the mold, suspected mold, but no test. I love any sort of wording from the inspector who's a jack of all trades, and the buyer has failed to do their due diligence to really confirm what that defect is. So the easiest thing to explain to a buyer is that a defect is anything that adversely affects value or safety. Then it becomes what is the overall, what is the priorities of this inspection response, and really doing a good job when you have the time during your time frame that you put into your contract to make sure that those things are actual defects, so that we're all understanding what we're talking about rather than speculating and trying to go, well, what's what here? Well, don't put it on the seller who's not going to go and do a mold test and call in a remediation company for something as common as mold. So I think it's common to see that, but it's frustrating for you on the buyer side to spend a lot of time bringing in the specialist. But if you're trusting of the other seller so much that they're going to do the same sort of due diligence process that you would, then I guess you're okay with that. But spend some time with those defects, suspected defects, and make sure you know whether they are an actual defect or not. But yeah, a lot of things can be called safety risks, and it's a matter of whether you really, what are your priorities? If you want to have the GFCI fixed and you don't have any other major stuff, that's probably something worth having them fixed. But otherwise, don't worry about it. But yeah, make sure to get all the information on the front end, and don't wait and depend on the seller or listing agent to do that.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I think what comes into play with that a lot too, you guys, if you are the listing agent and it's the buyer's agent sending something like that over, sometimes it is once again, remember, just assume that buyer's agent is representing the buyer, and maybe this is what the buyer has demanded. But that buyer's agent, what would be a good thing is to pick up the phone and just say, hey, I just want you to know that it looks like there's mold or whatever. We're not really sure. We're going to need maybe a couple more days. Can we get an extension? Because we want to get a contractor out here to confirm that or whatever. You as a buyer's agent, that is amazing to pick up the phone. I don't remember if it was Natanya or someone else. I'm sorry, I talked to a lot of agents, but I don't remember who it was, but I remember someone saying they called over. No, it was Amy Jones was talking to me Friday, and she was telling me how, like, literally there was an active leak while she was there in the house, and she called the agent to let them know, like, they're still interested, but she wanted to give them a heads up, like, you know what I mean? Like, there are things, there's no such thing as going way too over, above and beyond. Like, she went out of her way to let her know, hey, I just want you to know we just got done with the inspection. We are going to be asking for these 3 major things. Here's the reason why, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up. Do you have to do that? No, but it's awesome. On her way, leaving from there, she's just giving her a heads up so that they can kind of wrap their brains around that and kind of know what's going on. Does that make sense? And she was just like, since there's renters in there, I thought you might want to know that they need to get over there because it's leaking down into the crawl. So yeah, but anybody else comment? Thank you for that, Andrew. Comment, question?
Can I throw one out that's not completely on topic, but based on your story? How, and I remember when the closing that you were describing earlier, I remember when that went down. How was that not a fair housing action I mean, I know your client wanted to close, you guys wanted to get done with the deal, which I fully understand, but like, if you're put in that situation as an agent, like the situation that he was in, where clearly his client is acting outside the bounds of fair housing, you're supposed to represent your client. However, we are absolutely supposed to be bound by fair housing and be playing by those. Like, that's how you know what I'm asking? Like, how does that?
Luckily they went above and beyond to incurring costs and everything to get her, like they sent a notary out 3 times. Like it was insane because the lady was in Arizona. They went above and beyond to make sure that we were closed a day later, and then she was charged more fees for different things for the cost of that. And so I don't know what he did on fair housing end of it. And now that I'm all up in fair housing with my board, if that would have happened right now, it would probably be a different story. But I don't know what he did or didn't do going there, because like he never admit to me, like I said, he just kept apologizing that he was sorry. And then I found out somebody at Platt used to be related to that woman and told me, oh yeah, she's definitely a racist. Like it was just a small world. They saw that. So, but it got done. So, but you remember the drinking I did because of that one. Yes, my friend. Natanya, I saw that you did your thing. You were great to unmute. Did you have a question or comment?
Sorry, I was just going to ask if it is a fair housing if it went through, because what are we going to do now to her?
Yeah.
Since it went through.
I am not sure. Now, obviously, if it would have been delayed, my concern was getting it to close and calming my client down so that she didn't just say, screw this, I'm out of here. Like I was just trying to. So if it would have been a delay, then obviously we would have went all full throttle with fair housing, but I don't know what you would do since.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But crazy world that we live in, that was just last year. So
I do have one other question. Your 6 things, do you have that written in an email? That would be, I was walking my dog when I was listening. That's why my face wasn't on. So I couldn't take notes. I can re-listen to the video, but if you have it in an email, great. If not, I know that look, I'll copy it.
Oh, I don't have it in an email. But guess what? Michelle is so amazing that if I give her my notes, I bet she will do it. So I will get those to you and Trisha, okay? So, Michelle will get those to you and Trisha. So, yes, thanks for asking. I will take care of that. Yes, I will. I see you, Lisa.
Guys, we are coming up on the end of our time. So Crystal, thank you. It is always such a joy to hear from you. So thanks for sharing this morning. Guys, if you were wondering as Crystal was talking, what does she mean? A D personality, an I personality? What is she talking about? We're getting into it next week in person, guys. We're meeting in person on Monday and Wednesday of next week in the 16th Street office in the main space. Mask up. But Crystal will be leading us through a DISC personality training for those 2 days. She did it with the team leads a couple of months ago, and it was so good. So please reserve that time on your calendar. Come into the office in person and learn more. That's all I got.
And for any team leads that were there, this is going to be a little different because we're going to focus on, instead of how you use this to work with your team members, I'm going to use it to focus on how you use it to work with your clients, buyers and sellers, and to connect with them. So they're going to be the focus instead of team members.
So get your butts there is what we're trying to say. Have a great day, everyone. See you tomorrow for Mark speaking on controlling emotions. Adios.
Bye, everybody.